We start with a wild child racing around on a motorbike, probably because he has small man syndrome and a tiny pea shoot to boot, as he accidentally stumbles across an upside down man, about to be offed by some nutjobs what have watched too many Predator films. Or some shit. This protagonist's name is Sean Jones, and he hides away like a right cuck whilst watching his upside downy prosecutor get pummeled by Asian mobster Edward Kim, who hilariously says he was raised by a single parent and he didn't turn out so bad, as he proceeds to bludgeon a man to death just for doing his job and upholding the law. Anyway, Sean Jones witnesses it, and so Eddie Kim totally puts out a hit on this fella, despite having no obvious way of knowing who the heck that guy was that just watched them whack a poor sap like a fleshy piñata and then speed off on a motorbike. But the goons somehow track him to his apartment, where he's saved by my man Sam Jackson, aka Special Agent Neville Flynn. He first tells Sean to do as I say and live, as he shoots up the thugs and then drives him off to the police station in Hawaii. Neville eventually convinces Sean to fly to LA and testify against that crazy rich Asian what totally smacked the shit out of a middle-aged prosecutor because reasons. So we then meet a bunch of characters who are all destined to be on board the main flight, and presumably get eaten by snakes, based on this film's genre, title and general premise. These include two pretty flight attendants called Hot Totty 1 and Hot Totty 2. I mean Claire and Tiffany. A wealthy black Kanye West type celeb with two security guards, and yes, that is Kenan Thompson from Nickelodeon's Kenan and Kel, ironically playing the one in orange. A camp male flight attendant who everyone assumes is gay because lazy comedy bro, and an older female flight attendant who looks suspiciously like that bird out of the Insidious movies. In the airport, there's also a Paris Hilton bimbo airhead type who's carrying a pathetic dog around who never shuts up called Mary Kay, presumably after one of the Olsen twins, but only slightly less annoying. And a honeymooning couple where the husband seems to be so scared of flying that he's practically reenacting that sweating scene skit from Airplane. Meanwhile, down in the cargo hold, one of Eddie Kim's men is spraying snake pheromones all over the gaff, and also all over the passengers' leys. Apparently, these pheromone things will make these guys go fucking crazy, just like my mother-in-law when I pissed all over a new settee after coming back drunk from the pub. At least I assume it was the pheromones that made her call me an ignoramus and ban me from Christmas dinner that year. Anyway, Neville takes Sean up to first class, where he's essentially booked it all out just for them two so Nevy Boy can better protect him. Wow, getting to rent out the entire top floor of a first-class jet just to babysit some scrote for a few hours? Well, I'm in the wrong fucking job, son. Neville then calls up his ex-partner, Agent Harris, back at FBI HQ, to confirm arrangements for Sean's safety and passage upon landing. Back in coach, a rude British guy gets fed up sitting beside a small yapping dog and a screaming baby, and I can totally relate. Last year I flew back from Cali and was stuck between Katie Price and AOC for 9 hours straight. And I'll leave it to you to figure out which one was which. Anyway, Top Totty Tiffany sits beside Sean and flirts with him for a bit, before a bloke who literally has a hit out on him tells this random flight attendant that he's totally a witness for the prosecution of a dangerous gangster. Meanwhile, Neville has gone to stretch his legs and chats up Hot Totty Claire behind the staff curtain. She's a bit pissed off though because the FBI have essentially commandeered half the plane and now she has to serve plebs in coach rather than the elites in luxury. She unfortunately phrases this as, "before you people commandeered the plane," and Neville snaps back with, "What do you mean, you people?" And she just cringes when it dawns on her that she's just made one of them microaggressions and now likely has to go on a re-education course to stop doing all these bad things. But he just says, "Lol, chill bro, I'm just joking with you." And before you can say, racialism is no laughing matter, especially to middle-class white women who are already obsessed with their own privilege, a timer goes off in the cargo hold. And just like on my wedding night, a giant python bursts from its cage and relentlessly attacks her pussy. Back above, a horny couple proceed to join the Mile High Club before this big-titted bimbo comes face-to-face with Matt Hancock. Whoops, I meant a slimy viper, which hilariously proceeds to give the worst motorboating session since I fell asleep in my wife's cleavage during foreplay last night. Although, to be fair, all that silicone does tend to get noxious after a while. Anyway, the snakes gather underneath and turn a few wires loose, as a chauvinist pig gets his winky eaten in the bogs, and not in a good way. Investigating the warning lights, the captain gets sneak attacked by a ninja viper, so naturally, instead of the flight attendant going down to help him to do her one fucking job, she sends the only other person on the plane qualified in flying and landing the damn thing. Eventually, they conclude that the captain simply suffered a fatal heart attack, and presumably haven't noticed the giant bleeding fang marks which must be somewhere on his neck given he was munched on harder than a vegan vampire falling off the wagon. And hilariously, despite his co-pilot stating he's flown with him for 10 years, all the group can muster for the surprise demise of the captain is a collective shrug. Aww. Suddenly though, all the gas masks come loose, and in a shocking twist what no one could ever see coming, the passengers all start getting attacked by a bunch of snakes on a plane.
No way!
And we proceed to have to watch endless scenes of dodgy actors wrestling with poorly rendered CG serpents and then die in increasingly ludicrous and gruesome ways. Amidst the carnage, a small boy tries to face off with a cobra, because he's watched too much Harry Potter on the flight over and thinks he can negotiate surrender via parcel tongue. Unfortunately, his grasp of the language is only rudimentary at best, and what he thought was a plea for mercy actually comes out as an insult about the snake's mother. So naturally, it bites the blonde bastard and tells him to put that in his chamber of secrets and smoke it. Or something like that. Meanwhile, the male flight attendant, what everyone assumes is a homo, blows up one of those slimy slitherers trying to penetrate him real good in a microwave, and says that's the last time he's ever going to go near anything remotely snake-like ever again. Or at least till that gay orgy that's scheduled for next Tuesday. LOL! Anyway, Neville tries to regain control of the situation and calm the chaos by going full Donald Trump and saying that they totally need to create a barrier by grabbing all their possessions and building a big wall. But unlike Donald Trump, he actually gets stuck in and helps build it himself, and presumably doesn't get the Mexican passengers to pay for all the labour costs. Bruh. Somehow, the pathetic dog named after an Olsen twin is still alive, as is her Paris Hilton airhead owner, despite being unconscious on the floor where all the snakes were because reasons, and only now starts getting hunted when she's awake and also on screen. Before she's killed horrifically though, another Asian guy, what's totally not the main Asian bad guy though looks pretty similar to him, snatches the serpent out of the air with his bare hands as it strikes, and he carries her out to safety like a total badass. Later, Neville comes across the Harry Potter superfan who thought he could speak Parseltongue, and is now suffering from snakebite, which was just like me throughout Freshers Week during the first few days of university, to be fair. Anyway, the old and busted flight attendant gets nipped saving a little nipper, and it looks like it's curtains for the #1 Lin Shaye cosplayer who likes to show up in countless Insidious movies. Elsewhere, the co-pilot tells Neville that they got about another 2 hours till they can land, and any one of those pesky serpents can trip a wire and bring them down faster than a hooker's drawers. So Nevy Boy gets on the blower to Agent Harris back at HQ and tells them all about the ludicrous situation they've somehow found themselves in, aka an attempted assassination via serpent snakes, and he can hardly believe someone would go to all this trouble just to whack off a young chap who saw more than he should have. I mean, Hillary would have just done it with a car bomb in broad daylight for fuck's sake. Anyway, after jumping at the chance to suck the poison out of a black man's arse cheeks, the male flight attendant, who everyone bizarrely thinks might be a bit of a bender, is dragged away by Nickelodeon's Kenan Thompson, as the Harry Potter superfan's hand swells up like Aunt Marge during the opening sequence of the third movie. Luckily though, some random woman who looks suspiciously like a younger version of Chris Hemsworth's wife sucks the poison out of his arm and saves his life. Man, if I knew it was that easy to get a suck job from a random girl, I would have rolled around in the snake pit of my local zoo years ago, son. Neville then tells Sean, who to be fair most of us have probably forgotten about by this point, to pull himself together and remember the first thing he ever said to him, which was, "Do as I say and live." And so he tells Sean to stay up by the airphone and totally let him know when Agent Harris calls. Meanwhile, the snakes seem to start getting through his shoddy wall, so Neville blows their asses away with a fire extinguisher because the only other practical weapons they have on board are sporks and broken glass bottles. And because he smartly reckons that using his gun in a pressurised environment to try and kill a bunch of thin and nimble snakes probably ain't the best idea at this point. Back on the ground, we're introduced to Dr. Stephen Price, aka the go-to guy for snake charming and shit. This geezer then shows off his expertise by stating the bleeding obvious that because snakes only attack when provoked, then something must be making them go all schizo up there. He then starts banging on about pheromones that act like drugs to them, and Sam Jackson can't believe he now has to deal with crackhead snakes again because he's already done a bunch of films with Quentin Tarantino. LOL! Anyway, Neville says he'll round up all the dead ones to try and identify the types of species, and Price proves what a sociopath he is by callously telling him to hurry up because, quote, time is tissue.
Bruh.
The passengers soon all get fed up and leery, and illegally burst up to first class without tickets to confront Neville about why they're all getting eaten up and shit. Sean then concedes their secret like a riot cuck, and tells them that they're all becoming Monster Munch because he's totally going to grasp that psychotic Asian mobster tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, the one remaining co-pilot is then attacked by a snake because plot hurdle, bro, whilst Neville becomes a giant racialist by having the audacity to notice skin colour and straight up racially profiles a bunch of the suspected perpetrators. And as a black man, he really should know better. The hot, totty but mostly dopey flight attendant finally notices a soda can rolling downward, and so naturally starts to worry about the safety of the one remaining pilot who they've all left on his own to fend for himself whilst trying to safely fly a giant fuck-off plane. She then gets outsmarted by a snake as the plane heads into a bigger downward lunge than my mate Reg when he dove to catch my last chicken McNugget where I dropped into the trash. Apparently, he reckons it would be a waste of food if the 5-second rule applies. But I don't think that does apply if you've already previously dropped it into a drainage gutter in rat-infested London. But anyway, Claire manages to hack it to death with a random hatchet before Neville helps her steady the plane. Sean then ventures downstairs to coach, despite explicitly being told to stay upstairs because if he dies it's all been for nothing. But luckily he saves Top Totty Tiffany from a rogue trolley, which busts through the budget wall like a metallic Kool-Aid man. Sean then illegally tries to get everyone upstairs to first class, despite again none of them having paid the requisite fees for the upgrade. The honeymooning couple, including the panicky husband what hates flying, gets pummeled by another rogue trolley, before getting gangbanged to death on the floor by a bunch of slimy, rounded things. And you can just practically hear the Count Male flight attendant groaning in jealousy. After taking out a bunch more nameless extras, a giant fuck-off boa constrictor breaks through the light above, and the stairs totally collapse through the weight of sheer panic. So naturally, the cowardly selfish British guy lobs poor Mary Kate over to the hungry snake, before it says it don't want no stinking Olsen twin, and proceeds to constrict the karma out of that selfish twat once and for all. Meanwhile, back in the cockpit, the presumed dead co-pilot suddenly comes back to life and pops out of the underhatch like an inconvenient boner at a pre-Sunday morning sermon. Or something like that. Anyway, those who survived in first class inflate a life raft to block the stairway entrance hole, because luckily, snakes are well known to not possess anything remotely sharp in their body that can easily pierce inflatable plastics. After engaging the autopilot, and again leaving a half-dead dying man to fend for himself whilst trying to steady a giant fuck-off plane, Price tells them that it will take a day or two before they can get all the anti-venom shipped over, because it turns out all these snakes are foreign immigrants what are not even from this continent.
We're going to build a wall. It's going to be built.
To add to their problems, they realise that the air is not recycling, which means pretty soon it will get harder and harder to breathe. Price says there's only one guy who could insidiously plant this many evil snakes in cabinets, and his name is Klaus Schwab of the WEF.
So that we penetrate the cabinets.
Actually, I mean some thug who lives out in the desert. The co-pilot says that in order to get the AC back on and keep breathing, some poor sap is going to have to go reset a breaker down in the cargo hold. And poor Neville's soul almost leaves his body when he realises he's going to be the chump to go face off with a bunch of slimy sidewinders. So he heads on down whilst everyone is burning up upstairs. But when he gets to the AC breaker, he finds the lever is stuck. And whilst trying to find something to leverage it with by rifling through people's personal luggage, he's attacked once again by Piers Morgan. I mean a toxic snake, before he impales it dead with some sort of harpoon thing. Elsewhere, Agent Harris flies over to the desert to collect a bunch of anti-venom from the king of snake traffickers. After a quick shootout, said snake trafficker gets bit by one because karmic irony, bro. And Harris refuses to give him the anti-venom unless he gives up all the identities of the snakes on the plane what he supplied to Asian gangster Eddie Kim for the hit. Back on the flight from hell, the passengers celebrate after Neville tells them that all the anti-venom is secured and will all be waiting for them upon landing. Though how that's going to help that British fella what got hugged to death harder than my Frau Auntie Fanny, I don't know. They try to tell co-pilot Rick the good news but can't open the door. And after breaking it down, they see he's more swollen and lumpier than my tummy on Taco Bell night, as loads of snakes have now infiltrated the cockpit. See, this is exactly why you don't leave the one man who can land the bleeding plane on his own for so long. Anyway, after asking if anyone else can fly a plane, Nickelodeon's Kenan Thompson gets volunteered by his boss, because he's got, quote, over 2,000 flying hours logged. Though he doesn't say in what kind of aircraft, because he could just totally mean GTA for fuck's sake. And in one of the most iconic moments in cinematic history, Sam Jackson snaps when they remind him they still have to somehow clear the serpents out of the cockpit, and screams,
"I have had it with these monkey-fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane!"
And his crazy plan to solve the dilemma is to strap everyone in and then blow out the friggin' windows. Which he then prepares to do, despite no one flat out saying he must be a fucking madman, son. And before you can say, this'll end well, he shoots out a window, sending more toxic snakes out of a small crack than when my doctor made me take those deworming tablets last year. Neville and Nickelodeon's Kenan Thompson make it to the cockpit and begin to descend the plane, whilst the tiny crack gets made into a bigger crack and threatens to start swallowing people into its cold oblivion. A scene so well directed that the supposed powerful gaping hole can't even suck this lady's shoes off. Anyway, it all calms down a bit as the amateur pilots level off the plane and get closer to ground level, before Nickelodeon's Kenan Thompson reveals it actually was video games he was talking about when he said he's logged over 2,000 flight hours, as he's totally obsessed with a flight simulator game on the PS2. Oh, I know! And not even an Xbox Series X game. Somehow, though, they land it pretty decently without either burning up the tyres, even though I always end up tearing a wing off whenever I try to do the same in GTA 5. Liberties! Everyone is rushed off the plane for medical assistance before Neville thanks Sean and says he couldn't have done it without him, even though the fucker's been nowhere to be seen throughout the last act and barely had any screen time throughout the whole freaking movie. Unfortunately, though, one last remaining snake jumps out and bitterly goes for one last ride. And it must be that same horny red snake from earlier, because it totally attaches itself to his fucking nipples as Neville pumps Sean full of bullets and kills the serpent, before exhaustedly slipping down a small slide like a ragdoll. But luckily, he's magically wearing a bulletproof vest, so he's totally A-OK. Huzzah! Later, and rather hilariously, the camp male flight attendant, who everyone in the film assumed was gay, reunites with his gorgeous girlfriend and promptly snogs her face off, teaching them all a hard yet valuable lesson about bigotry and prejudice. Which is great, because getting a steer on personal morality is totally the only reason why I would go to see a high concept budget B movie called Snakes on a Plane. Anyway, Nevy Boy thanks that hot totty Claire Bird and flirts with her, whilst the other top totty Tiffany Bird snogs Sean and gives him her digits. Man, next time I go on a flight to LA, I'm totally smuggling a bunch of snakes in my pants, as it seems to be a surefire way of getting all the girls. And we end on Neville taking a leaf out of Sean's book to start living a little, like at the start when he went around riding motorbikes in a field before coming across a mob hit and then getting his life ruined by an angry Asian. So this time they just do a bit of surfing out on the waves, and presumably trying to set up the inevitable sequel called Sea Worms on a Submarine. And that's it. That's the plot and that's your lot. Though my favourite part was when that greedy boa tried to scoff that British geezer. I haven't seen a snake eat a man that harshly since Michael Gove stabbed Boris Johnson in the back during the 2016 Tory party leadership election. Though not sure what happened to the bad guy in this flick. He never even got arrested or held to account on screen, in the most unsatisfying conclusion I've experienced since the feds closed down my favourite massage parlour halfway through my 2-for-1 happy ending voucher session. Anyway, consider ringing that bell thing so you don't miss any future recaps. Tell me if you like this flick in the comments if you have time, and I'll see you in the next one.